On today's Locked On Jayhawks, it happened again. And by again, Kansas lost a close game, and Kansas lost a close game that they probably could have won against K-State.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am sad man, Derek Johnson at D Johnson Radio, and I am sad. Many of you are sad as well. KU falls 29-27 to Kansas State. We're going to get into it on today's episode. Thank you for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every show. Free and available here wherever you get your podcasts and on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. So we're going to get into the overview, what keeps going wrong in these games. By these games, I don't just mean the Kansas State games, but also all these one-score games. Kansas now lost 7 consecutive one-score games. We'll get into the GOATs of the game, good and bad for KU. There actually was a lot of good in this game for Kansas. And then what is next for the Jayhawks? This episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. 29-27 is the final score of this one, and a game that once again Kansas could have easily won the football game. You had many different sliding door moments that you could have made this happen, and that is what makes this even more frustrating. You let them off the hook again. You should have, over these last 2 games that you played against them, both of them close games that had maybe some weird things happening for maybe both teams. You should have come away with at least one of them, and you can make the argument that they should have won the last 2 games against Kansas State. And instead, we're sitting here today. Kansas is 2-6. Kansas State's in the Big 12 title race. Kansas has lost 16 straight to Kansas State. It's just abhorrent, to be completely honest. Like, here are some of the classic plays that lead to one-score losses, but also are just classic plays that happen in this series. I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a mental block or what, but it feels like every time KU and K-State lines up, it's just disaster happens for KU. And actually, there were a few plays in the second half where it was like, oh, K-State is the team that is having a couple bad mistakes that is going against them. But, like the Avery Johnson fumble, for instance. But here are some classic KU K-State plays that happen. You uncorked the deep ball by Jalen Daniels. That was a perfect throw to Quentin Skinner. It gets open, would have made it 14-0 and touchdown. Instead, it's dropped. And instead, all of a sudden, they're able to go up 16-7. Before you kind of come back from there. They had a 3rd and 10 where their running back picks up 11 yards to kickstart their first scoring drive on a running play. You're driving late in the first half where you're down 16-14, and even a field goal gives you the lead, and you throw an interception, and on top of it, it gets returned 50 yards to where they almost had a chance to score at the end of the half. You substituted too late to burn a timeout early in the third quarter, and I guess it just came down to Kansas losing on downs at the end, but it would have been nice to have an extra timeout at the end of the game there. Getting a touchdown, but missing the PAT so you stay down 3 points. And at the end of the day, that missed PAT, I guess, didn't really matter because you ended up losing by 2. I'll be completely honest. I kind of thought I have text receipt proof that I was texting somebody literally before they kicked the PAT. I was like, they should go for 2 here. Because at the time, it was 23-20. You make the 2-point conversion. Now, even if Kansas State gets a touchdown, it would be 30-22, and Kansas would still be in a 1-score game. Whereas even if you did kick the PAT and make it, which it ended up missing, it's 23-21. If Kansas State goes down, gets a touchdown, makes the extra point, it's now 30-21. You're down 2 scores. I thought they should have gone for 2 to begin with, and if you would have gone for 2 and gotten it, all of a sudden that K-State field goal at the end is to tie the game, and now you're playing at the end of it to tie or to maybe go to overtime. Okay. Jalen Daniels fumbles around midfield with under 4 minutes to go. It sucked that is how the finish of the game happened for Jalen Daniels, both with the fumble and not being able to convert on the 4th down at the end of the game. I don't know if the K-State was blitzing like every play at the end of the game. I don't know if that's on Jalen Daniels for not recognizing it. I don't know if that's on the offensive coordinator. I don't know if that's on the coaches for not calling plays beforehand to be like, hey, they're probably going to blitz. They keep doing it. Do keep in mind that coaches can be in the earpiece of Jalen Daniels, so 15 seconds. I don't know if some of those plays, where they were in terms of the play clock, but like you would have you would have thought that one of the coaches would have relayed that to Jalen in the mic. So that's kind of the way I'm leaning, that, it's probably on the coaches at that point for not either calling a play that's going to work against the blitz or relaying that in the mic. But, having that happen, the dropped interception that you had with under 2 minutes, you had a great blitz play dialed up and you had the interception in your hands, and back-to-back years now where just drops. You can look at the Skinner touchdown drop. You can look at the drop of the defensive lineman who dropped that one. That would have been an interception that sealed the deal. Same with the Rich Miller one the season before. Like, those are the plays you have to make if you want to win this game. And then, just unable to understand K-State was blitzing late. Those are just classic KU plays in this game, right? The only thing that was missing was Kansas State having like a punt return for a touchdown or something like that. But it's literally the same thing every time. How it happens and the severity or how competitive you are in the game, that has varied a little bit, right? There have been some bad Kansas teams that maybe get blown out by Kansas State. So maybe the score, the competitiveness has varied, but what has happened has basically been the same. It's just KU makes self-inflicted mistakes. K-State typically doesn't. Even if they do, they overcome them with some other plays, and then you just can't get over the top at the very end. And no matter who the players are, no matter who the team has been, you're just not making those key plays. You just continue to shoot yourself in the foot every freaking year. And it's this season too. It's every freaking loss so far, minus TCU. KU was in a position where they could have won the game. KU was in a position in many of them where they should have won the game. And every single one, it feels like Devin Neal should have had more touches. I didn't even touch on that again, right? Maybe there's one or two exceptions where it's like, no, like maybe the West Virginia game, you're like, no, you did try to give it to Devin Neal. Again, this was one of those in the K-State game where it's like, the dude is being a warrior out there. He's playing through the injury. He's running well. And at the end of the game, it's just like, no, we're not going to go to your best player. It's brutal, man. It's brutal. Kansas now 2-6 with a plus 43 point differential. That is unbelievable. And yes, you could say, okay, well, obviously they ballooned up their point differential with the FCS game. Okay. Take that one away. They're 1-6 with a -2 point differential. That might honestly be even crazier. To be 1-6 with a -2 point differential, that doesn't happen. They've lost 7 consecutive one-score games. That feels remarkably unlucky. But at the same point in time, it feels like to me we're past the point of it being bad luck. Like, yeah, maybe there is some bad luck in there that, in theory, if you play 7 one-score games, you're probably going to have the ball roll against you a few times in those games. You kind of had the ball roll for you in this one against Kansas State. Think about it. Avery Johnson has that fumble. That is quite literally the ball rolling to you on a play where he just lost the ball. You had a pressure that led to an interception where the ball rolled right in your defensive tackle's arms. You couldn't make the interception, right? You have some of these plays where it's like the ball actually rolled to you in the Kansas State game. So you can't point to luck. At some point, you have to say, this isn't just bad luck. This is something about you, what you're doing wrong. Is it the players? I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. Maybe there is some mental block you have to get over in this rivalry in these one-score games, and it starts to get in the back of your head that once you get late in these games, you're just going to lose, and maybe that does matter. But, like, I look at this Kansas team, I still like a lot of these players. I still think they're really talented. I still think they have a lot of really good players on this team. At some point, this comes back on the coaches. And I still think Lance Leipold has done a tremendous job with Kansas. I mean, the fact that we are, obviously this is a very crummy season and it sucks, but like the fact this is where we are through 4 years, that you've made a couple of bowl games. If I told you when Lance Leipold took over that through year 4, didn't tell you what happened each and every year, but that they've made 2 bowl games through 4 seasons, including a 9-win season, and they've been ranked however many times, and they've upset some top 25 opponents. You look at the Oklahoma game, like yada, yada, yada. You would have taken that coming in. But it's just unfortunate because, like, you look at some of the little game management things over the course of the game, over the course of the season that you're not making, not being aggressive enough on 4th down. Why did they punt on that 4th and 2? I know they ended up getting a stop, getting the ball back and scoring, but couldn't you theoretically say, okay, if you go for the 4th and 2, maybe you go down and score, and then maybe that stop you got after punting, you would have just got the stop after you scored, and then you would have gone down and scored again, and then now the game's over, right? Like, why are you not being more aggressive? You're at Kansas. And then, like, you know, some of the timeout issues, or like I said, with the aggressiveness stuff, or maybe play calling situationally isn't always the best for KU. It's very frustrating. And at some point, like, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and go, what are we doing wrong here? Because that is 7 straight one-score games. And I can point to it and say, like, even I'm wearing a Chiefs hoodie right now. There are times during the game where Andy Reid is not good with game management, with timeouts, with doing this or that. And they lose some close games because of it. So, there is still some luck to it. The KU is probably a little bit unlucky here. But again, what are you going to do to change it? What are you going to do to draw the line in the sand? This cannot continue. The rest of the season doesn't really matter at this point. You're not making a bowl game. Right? You're going to win 4 straight games with 2 of them against ranked opponents and 2 of them on the road. And all of a sudden, Baylor's showing life too. You're not making the Big 12 championship game, obviously. You had a chance to make an everlasting memory and beat Kansas State. Despite a rough season, we could have looked back on this year and said, yeah, but they beat K-State. That was pretty cool. But you couldn't. So now it's a bye week, and it's 2 ranked opponents, and it all just sucks. And they somehow keep finding ways to hurt us. I put this out there. If you look at the high point of KU's 6 losses on ESPN win probability, the chances to lose all 6 games are 1 in 50,000. 1 in 50,000. But they keep finding ways to hurt us. We still love them. It is what it is, I guess. And same old, unfortunately, both in terms of this season and the KU K-State rivalry. So on we go. All right, let's get to our goats of the game. This is Locked On Jayhawks. This episode's brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Well, if you had Kansas plus the 10, 9.5, 10.5, whatever you got it at, you would have been good to go, at least for the spread in this game. I told you beforehand, Avery Johnson over rushing yards. That was the easiest bet ever. That one obviously cashed in. Devin Neal touchdown. That worked out for KU. Luke Grimm was very involved. So we hit on some of that stuff. And you can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports partner of the NFL. On to our goats of the game. If you're new to the segment, good goats, greatest of all time, kind of the newest adage of the term. Bad goats is when I was younger. I remember it was a scapegoat. It was a bad thing. So here's the good goats. Actually, a good amount for KU considering it was a loss as well. Devin Neal gets a good goat. Probably should have had more touches, 13 carries, 66 yards and a touchdown. Now, maybe in the back of your mind, you're thinking, hey, this guy's playing through an injury. We don't want to overdo it. I get it. But certainly at the end of the game, it's like the gloves come off at the end of the game, But 13 carries, 66 yards and a touchdown. And that was against the #1 defense in the Big 12 against the run. So the fact that he was still able to produce at basically around 5 yards a pop is very impressive. Plus, he had 5 catches for 36. I continue to like the fact that they are getting him involved in the passing game these last, I would say, 3 games, which is something that they haven't really done in the past, and I think it's a good way to do it. That's it. Some of the runs that he had were just him just saying, I'm going to get this. You think about the one pass where Jalen threw it into the flats. I think it was on the it was actually, I think, the play he got injured on at the beginning of the game. They end up going to get the touchdown. It was like a 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. Jalen just lobs one into the flats for him, and it's basically just Devin versus one K-State defender. He's got to either make him miss or basically drag him to the first down line. And he did just that. It was really impressive. It was just, that was basically what Devin did all game. It was just, continuing to fight for everything. And every play that he got a chance to, he was going to put Kansas in the best position to win the game. Trevor Wilson gets a good goat. How about that? Trevor Wilson coming in there and making some big catches, 4 catches for 69 yards. No special teams mistakes this time from Wilson. That belonged to somebody else this year for KU. But you think of Trevor Wilson typically being this guy who is really good with the ball in his hands, speedy receiver. He was making contested catches that were tough grabs. That was nice to see. He had himself a big game for KU. Luke Grimm had a good game, 4 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. He just continues to have that nice connection with Jalen Daniels. Caleb Taylor had an excellent game. Early Pro Football Focus grade is a 90, which I think is the highest PFF grade for KU defensive tackle so far this season. I think defensive lineman this season. He had 2 tackles for loss in the game. He really flashed for KU overall. Mello Dotson gets a good goat. He had 5 targets against him. He only gave up 1 catch, and it went for 3 yards. He obviously had that injury that was a little bit scary, but obviously ended up being okay and coming back in the game. He was excellent for KU in coverage. Jalen Daniels, I would say until the final 4 minutes of the game, right? And even the last drive, like I don't necessarily, like I said, I think some of that on the last drive was seeing K-State continually blitzing. Like maybe there is an onus on Jalen to, I don't know, throw the ball quicker or change the play. I don't know his ability to do those sorts of things. And I don't know like the passing concept on some of those blitz plays, like they could have been, they didn't have a hot route. They didn't have somebody quick to throw the football to, right? Like that's been a valid criticism of the Jeff Grimes offense, that a lot of times they're throwing a lot of difficult concepts and there aren't a lot of gimmies over the course of their route concepts in their games. And so I kind of put the last drive more on the coaches and the play calling and stuff than I do on Jalen. Obviously the fumble though, very bad. You can't have a fumble in that situation. You at least hold on to the football, you punt the ball away, pin them deep and hope that they don't drive long enough to kick a field goal. Although you could argue that, you know, in a sense, fumbling there at least gives you a chance, because if you do, I mean, it just depends how it works out, right? If you end up punting the ball away and K-State goes down and kicks a field goal, because that longer time for them to drive, you probably don't get another chance to drive back down yourself. At least this way, they kick the field goal and you still had time. I don't know, man. But besides that, Jalen did play a really good game. The first 56 minutes or whatever, he played an awesome game. He was hitting key throws for KU. And again, keep in mind that he should have had a touchdown pass to Quentin Skinner. Right. I mean, the stats were solid for Jalen. They didn't jump off the page. It's not like he had like 300 yards. But if Quentin Skinner holds on to that football, all of a sudden now it's looking more like 250 passing yards with another touchdown on there and a solid rushing day. Like Jalen played a very good football game for KU. And even the interception he had, yes, that was not you throw into double coverage. That's not ideal. But I know Trevor Maddich, like in the halftime I guess report, whatever you want to call it, for ESPN, like he thought it was pass interference on K-State that disallowed Trevor Wilson to even get a chance to make a play on the ball. Maybe it just becomes incomplete if that doesn't happen. So who knows? Offensive line, you gave up only 2 tackles for loss and 1 sack all game long against a very disruptive K-State defense. So that's actually very good. You also had 5.6 yards per carry overall as an offense against a defense coming in that was giving up just 2.7 yards per carry. And sure, again, at the end of the game, you weren't great at keeping pressure from Jalen Daniels, but that was more about K-State blitzing and KU not running quick passes or having the pickup or having the open hot route, right? I mean, there's only so much you can do. All 5 of your offensive linemen can pancake the guy that they're blocking, but if they blitz 6 guys, they're still a free guy. You know what I mean? So offensive line was really good for KU in this one. And specifically, if I'm looking at PFF grades, Logan Brown had an 85 grade. He had an 80 pass block, 90.5 run block, and he even had the toughest matchup to deal with K-State's leader in sacks, who had 7 of them. So good game for Logan Brown. As far as the bad, Jeff Grimes, you got to let Devin Neal try to ice that game, in my opinion. And they didn't really do that. You also didn't adjust to them pressuring at the end of the game. I will say it wasn't all bad. I would say there was a lot of good from Jeff Grimes in this game, but in critical moments, it definitely failed for KU. Not a stellar game for the KU linebackers. I'm lumping this all in one big thing. I do feel bad for Cornell Wheeler because he's probably still playing through a bit of an injury that probably slows him down. He probably isn't playing at the same game speed that he was pre-injury right now. So that's unfortunate there. But Taiwan Berryhill, Cornell Wheeler, and Logan Brown, they all graded below 60. And I'm talking more of the traditional linebackers, like actually like Jason Gilliam, who played a good amount of snaps, actually graded really well for KU. But the traditional linebackers, all 3 of those, Berryhill, Wheeler, Brown, graded below 60 for KU. They had a combined 5 missed tackles. They had a combined 9 targets against them for 7 catches, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. It was not a good game for the linebackers. And, overall, I've liked what J.B. Brown has done this season and what he is. I like what Cornell Wheeler is when he's healthy. I do feel like J.B. Brown, though, should be used more as like how the Chiefs use Leo Chenal, this run-stopping linebacker. You're going to blitz him. Sometimes he'll play as a defensive end, sort of. Maybe he's not really in passing downs a ton. Like that should be the usage of JB Brown. I feel like it's a combo of misusage for KU and also like they just haven't been able to bring in all the dudes that they want to. It feels like those are my biggest questions right now about recruiting. I guess that's a future episode. Like, what are you bringing in at linebacker and receiver? As far as the last bad goat, though, special teams. You missed a PAT. Like I said, thought you should have gone for 2 in that situation, but nonetheless, you missed it. Damon Greaves, who actually has been good this year, had a bad game. That was not a good game for Damon Greaves punting the football. And then, I mean, the big one, I forgot to mention this, honestly, in the open, but like, Jameel Croft, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? I think Jameel Croft is going to end up having a good career. I think he's a very talented corner, but what are you doing in that situation? And I don't know if that's something where, because you've seen that before if you watch enough football, that the guy stands out of bounds, catches the ball, and then you get it at 35. So you can understand what was going through his head. The problem is you have to be standing out before you catch the football. And like, it was just such a big boneheaded play that it didn't just prevent, like it didn't just ruin your offensive drive. It also led to them having 2 points and really 9 points from getting a touchdown on the next drive. And that was such a big swing in the game. And it's just like, you cannot have a clean game against K-State in special teams. And it is just mind blowing that you can never figure that out. All right, what's next for KU? Our episode is brought to you by Game Time, which has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Their curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Maybe you need to go to a comedy event to help cleanse your mind this weekend. KU on the bye week, right? Go do that. But you can also get KU basketball tickets with Game Time, including coming up this Tuesday night against Washburn. They have their all-in pricing ability that allows you to toggle this feature and show the total up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Finishing things up on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks, what is next for KU? Well, as far as for some show stuff this week, we will have a Washburn preview episode on our next episode. Because it is a Washburn preview, we're not going to go as in-depth as maybe some of our other previews. So we're also going to have our two biggest takeaways from the KU football game lumped in with that episode. We'll have a Washburn recap later this week. It'll be another bye week for KU football this week. And then your next game will be the following Saturday against what has been an elite Iowa State squad, an undefeated top 15 ranked Iowa State squad. It's a really good defense. Rocco Becht is, I think, taking another step in year two. I really like their two outside receivers. They've got a stable of running backs they can rotate in. It's a really good Iowa State team, and they're probably going to have as many fans, if not more, than what Kansas has in Arrowhead. After you have another loss, after you have a bye week, after you're thinking about basketball season. That game is also the Saturday after KU plays North Carolina on a Friday night, I believe. So, a lot of people are going to be focusing on basketball, but I hope it's a good turnout nonetheless, because I really don't think that, yes, there have been lots of mistakes or issues, as there are for any team, by players. But I think this struggles and these close losses, I think KU still has talent. I still like these KU players, and I hope they get a good send-off to finish out their career here at Kansas, because they deserve better than this, I think, to say the least. That'll do it for this episode, though, of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. Back for that KU Washburn preview on Tuesday morning. See you then on LOJ.